Hi there and welcome to the Barbara Young channel. Now today I'm going to make a skirt, or shall I say over several days probably, because I probably could get it done in one day, but I mean that's pushing it a bit. So over several days I'm going to make a skirt and I'm going to make my favourite skirt, which is the Simplicity 8133 skirt. But this time I'm going to take you along and show you how I do it, how I actually make this skirt, because I've made it so many times, but with a few variations, as it were, a couple of little alterations there to make it the skirt that I want. So I thought I'd show you how I do this and what I do to make my skirt, this wrap skirt, which is absolutely brilliant wrap skirt, I think so anyway. So I think first of all I'll start by showing you the fabric that I'm going to use. So I've got a couple of bits of fabric, because to start off with, one of the slight alterations or amendments to the pattern that I've done is that I line my skirts, these wrap skirts, because the original is just a material skirt but with no lining in it at all. So it is a nice wrap skirt, you know, that the model shows it off really nicely. You get varying lengths of it, and actually you can adjust the length to just whatever you want really. Just work out how you want it to sit and then cut it to that length really. But it just is a single piece of material. As I say, I prefer to line it so that when you're walking it doesn't stick, and if you've got tights on it's going to still sit nicely. So the main material I'm going to use is this stuff, this nice sort of bluey sort of coloured fabric. Now this is, I have to admit, from the swaps table from my sewing social, and it's a really nice fabric. I really like this. It's got a feel, I'd say it's like a linen feel. I think it's probably more like a cotton but with a linen look to it, but that's how it feels and that's what it seems like. I don't know the composition, because like I say, it's from the swaps table, so I think that's going to turn out quite nice. Yeah, so that's the main material. And then the lining. Now when it comes to lining, I tend to be someone who puts something a little bit different on the lining. I don't use just plain lining, even though I have used plain lining before. So again, from the swaps table, from my sewing social, I found this lovely, gorgeous stuff. And now this is really drapey and swishy and very much, I think it's probably, it's very soft and smooth, so it's not going to catch on tights or anything, but it's very swishy in that. So I thought I'd use this. Now I got quite a bit of this, and I know you're probably looking at it going, Barbara, why on earth are you using that as a lining? That should be a main fabric, should be you know, the main deal, the big thing to show off. I quite like putting something different, something nice and bright, and something a bit showy underneath. And I know that I'm the only person that's going to know it's there, and unless you're, you know, standing right next to me having a look at my lining, and if you are, you're obviously way too close. But I just like that little bit of a difference, a little bit of a surprise that's there in the lining, just so I know it's there and that it's a little bit of something jazzy underneath. I don't know how else to put it, but yeah, so I'm going to use that as the lining. And there is actually enough here that if I'm careful about how I cut this out, I can probably actually still get a nice sort of loosish, swishy summer skirt out of it, because there is quite a bit there. So that's going to be my lining, this really soft and smooth, and I don't know what this fabric is. I'd say it's possibly, could be a polyester, but I think this might be a viscose or a viscose mix of some sort. But it's certainly got a very nice soft feel to it, and a lovely print. And I think these two, let me just put them together. will actually go all right together. They're fine, they're both blues, and one of them won't be seen really, but that's up to me. So there we go, that's the fabric choice for this. So without further ado, let's get on and start having a look at making this skirt. First of all, the pattern. Now the pattern is actually not too bad. It's quite small. I say small. It's not a large amount of pieces. So I think they kept it sort of quite simple. What you've got, and I do apologise for the crinkling, because what I do is I always trace out all of my patterns so I can do any adjustments there on them. You've got a back piece which is cut on the fold with darts in it, so that's just a back piece. Then we have which one's this? A right front. So that's the right front, and this is the edge that overlaps. And as you see, it's just a basic piece. There's nothing flashy about that, and you only need to cut out one of these because, well, two, because I have to cut out the lining. But as far as the main fabric goes, that's one of them. And there's a left front, which is basically pretty much the same as the right front. There is a slight difference in it, especially in this edge. It's slightly different, but basically pretty much the same. And you only need to cut out one of those, which is brilliant. So one of each of those pieces, and then you've got the waistband, which again is, you've got one piece that's cut on the fold, which is the centre back piece, and then you've got your left front and right front. So that's left front, but you do need to cut out two of these, or depends how you do it, but I'll explain that as I go along as to whether I'm using lining or main fabric. But basically you need to cut out two of these, two of the centre back, two of the left front, two of the right front. And you see, that's basically just the way that they follow the contours of the main part. And then the other thing you need is the ties, which again is just a long piece. Yeah, that's as much as you need. It's just a long piece, creates the ties. Now the other part of this that I change is that I put in side seam pockets. And side seam pockets, quite simple. You just need a pocket piece like that you can create, quite simple. You can borrow it from another pattern if you like, make your own, or you've got to make sure if you draw your own that you've got enough room when you put your hand in so it can fit in the side there. I have made them before now, and I've done it a bit too short, so it's like I can't quite get my hand in. It's a big pocket getting your hand in, so making sure that's nice and wide to get your hand in. You can just draw your own out. You can put a bit of a curvature on this if you want. You can match it up against the pattern pieces to put a bit of a curvature on there if you feel you need to. But yeah, that's simple, you know. And then you just cut four of them because you've got two pockets. And that basically is all the pattern pieces. So as you can see, it's really quite simple. Now, one of the other things that I do as well, another adjustment, is that the overlap on the front, for when you put it together, you've got the left front and then the right front comes over the top, is that how much of an overlap there is. And on the original pattern, I found, or felt myself, that there wasn't enough overlap. So what I've done is I've extended both of the left and right fronts so that the better overlap. I'll show you that now on the main actual pattern piece so we can have a look at that. Okay, so just to sort of explain how I've made this a little bit wider, it's quite simple really, because this is actually a nice simple pattern. I'm cutting out size 12, so on my pattern piece when I trace this out, I've cut out size 12, I've copied out size 12, and I've come down to a length that suits me. This is an adjusted length to what I want, and basically to do that, all I've done is I've just copied that. I've drawn the top, I've drawn this section at the top here, and then I've just carried on the line going down, and then I've worked out how far I want my bottom piece to be compared to where these are, and then I've just shifted it up and just drawn it so it's nice and neat, so it follows the correct curve. But as I'm doing size 12, but the basics of this, I want this to be slightly wider than the actual original pattern piece. So size 12 is there on the side seam, but this is the overlap side. So size 12 should be about here, should be this line. But instead of drawing that line, what I've done is I've just drawn further over and used the line for size 18. So I've gained, I don't know, 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of extra on there. So it's just that little bit wider. Mind you, if you were making the smaller size, obviously you don't want too much overlap, because when the tie piece is here, when you're tying it up, you want to be able to make sure that you can still tie. You've got enough room between the two pieces to tie it up. So I suppose there's a bit of trial and error, that maybe if you make a mock-up of the 3 main pieces, just to get the idea of how much overlap you actually want. I suppose the other thing here is if you're doing size 18, I always copy out my pieces. But if you were doing size 18 and you were to draw along that line, and your tracing paper that you're copying it to would come out to point 18, then what you could do is, once you've drawn this line, is move the whole thing over a little bit and just add a bit more extra onto it, because these lines seem pretty much parallel to each other. So that's one way of extending it, but that's how I do it. I just mark it. I've marked it and drawn it on size 12, but I've come all the way across to size 18, and then that's just given me that little bit of extra. It's not a massive amount, but it's enough to make it so that I've got that nice little bit of extra overlap. So now I'm on to cutting out my lining, and there's something that I have to make a note of, or there's a note to myself. I always have to try and remember this. I've got it written down on my instructions, and I always have to read it. When I look through it, I go, okay, I have to remember that. Because if you're making this skirt, or as I'm making this skirt, and I'm using a lining fabric that doesn't have the same on both sides, and you've got, you know, a right side and a wrong side, then I have to remember that my pattern pieces, and I know that I copy these, I trace them out, but my pattern pieces still have a right side and the wrong side. So I have to remember that if I want this lining to show correctly, you know, the right side there, then I have to have the pattern piece face down onto the right side of the fabric. Otherwise it doesn't come out correct. You know, I don't want the wrong side of the fabric to be showing as the lining, even though it's the lining, but I still want it to be correct. So I always have to try to remember. In my notes, I've got it written down. If lining has a right side and a wrong side, I've got the right side up, but the pattern piece goes face down. So it's the wrong side is showing to me. That way I know it's correct when I stitch it together, and this will look correct on the lining, on the skirt. So, you know, because that's got to be the right side. And I always have to sit here and go, which way is it? It's like that? Is it like that? But hopefully my notes have made sure that I've got it right this time. So I've now got all of my pieces cut out, everything's here, fabric and lining. So I'm ready to get and start putting this together now. I'm going to start with the lining because, well, I just find it easier that way. I get the lining sorted and that's ready to go into the skirt once I get the main part of the skirt done. So that's where I always focus my efforts to start with, because I just find if the lining, by the time I get to do the lining, if I do the skirt first, then I'm like, oh, do I want to do that? So I get the lining done from the beginning and then it's not a problem. So the first thing to do on the lining is to put the darts in. There are 2 darts on the back here. So I've just marked them out and put some pins in so I can get and stitch them up. Quite simple really. That's the only sort of real sort of shaping that takes place in this garment really, as far as things like darts and tucks and anything go. Just 2 darts on the back. So now I put those couple of little darts in the back here. You know, just a bit of shaping there. Looks great. You can't really see it because it's just a bit busy on this fabric. But now I've got to actually start and get and attach the left and right front sides, or whatever they are, to this lining. And again, I have to think about this, because if I don't do it right, I'll end up with it, you know, dog's dinner with right side to wrong side and whatever. Now the way that I've got to think of it is that's the back, but that is going to be inside. So if I want this piece, which is, as I've cut, this is the left front, means that that has got to attach there, so that will wrap round, because that's my left inside. Yes. What makes it even trickier is I'm also going to do French seams. So now when I've got this, I've now got to go, okay, so I've got to put wrong sides together there. Now I've got hold of the correct bit. I better get and pin this up quickly before I get it wrong, because I want to make sure it's definitely right, because yeah, you know, reverse, back, inside. I do work it out, but I do have to think every time I do it, which way is it? So I make sure I get it right. So get that together. So I've got my lining now completed. Here it is, looking lovely. So there we go. That's the right side, the side that'll be inwards. That's the wrong side, that'll be sort of hidden away by the actual skirt. So yeah, there we go, looking great. 3 panels. Now I've already hemmed it as well. Turn the hem up. I do that now because it's a lot harder once I've sewn it in, and I find it's the easiest way to do it. I do turn it up quite a bit, anything between 3 and 4 centimetre turn up on that hem, because I want it to sit up inside of the skirt so it doesn't show at all. And then the other thing I do is where the seam is, that seam, when I've turned it up, that seam is stitched towards the back. So it sits flat towards the back of the skirt, to the back panel. And that'll be the case when it gets stitched in the top. The seam will sit to the back. There is a reason for that, which I will explain when I get there. But yeah, so there we go. That's the lining piece now done. So now I can move on to the main skirt, of which I'll be starting with the pockets. So now I'm going to get my pockets put into my skirt, or start on that. One of the things I did not mention was actually putting the pleats in the back of the skirt. So I've done that. That's quite simple, same as the lining, because it's exactly the same piece. And then on the pockets, what I tend to do, and if you can see that, I just mark them up with 1 mark on there and 2 marks on that. That means I keep the pairs together as I've cut them out. I don't like them to sort of be mixed up. Sounds a bit daft, but I mean, those 2 were cut together, so I like to keep them together. So I'll know which one for the left and right to match up as I put the first piece in here, and then obviously on the other piece that sits next to it, which is the left, right, whatever, left or right piece, I don't remember. So let's start with this. So now I need to mark this so far down. Now I tend to mark it on my pattern, because obviously this pattern is meant to be patch pockets and not inseam. putting in seam pockets, I've worked out it's somewhere between sort of 5 and 7 centimetres, so 6 or 7 centimetres down from the top. I mark it, and that's where the very top of this piece then goes, and then pin it down and stitch in as you normally would with a inseam pocket. It's about 1 centimetre in. If my seam allowance is 1.5 centimetres, I always stitch 1 centimetre in to actually put the pocket in, and of course it's right sides together to put that pocket in there, and I'll do that with all 4 pieces against the back and also the left and right piece of the skirt. So I'll get them put in and see how that looks. Okay, so I've stitched all my pockets in. This is just one to show that I've got my pockets on there. I've done that for all 4 pieces. Now there's a couple of things I just want to mention before I carry on. First one is to do with the pockets. What I do is that I will put a zigzag stitch down here where the pocket edge is before I sew this seam together with the next piece that goes to it. You know, you put the pockets out, put them together, stitch this whole seam up and go around the pocket. But like I say, before I do that, I zigzag this edge here, just this bit, because if I leave it, I tend to find that it's really difficult to finish this seam off if I do it afterwards. Whereas if I do it now, I get that bit covered and it won't fray. That's a brilliant way I find of doing that before I put this whole seam together. The other part, and the other thing I want to mention, is this seam here. This is the edge that's part of the overlap here. So it tells you on the instructions that you should, you know, create your hem, turn it over and create a hem there. I don't do that. I don't do that because I've got a lining piece, and that will go in later on and deal with that edge. So that doesn't get anything done to it right now. All I'm focusing on at the moment are the pockets. Well, I've managed to get the side seams done with the pockets in, so that's pockets done, and there's the other pocket. The left and right front pieces with the back, and I just wanted to show you that even though you're a bit hard to see because I've used thread that's the same colour pretty much as the fabric, but on here what I'd found is that if I did this zigzag stitch, because I don't have an overlocker, if I did that seam in this zigzag stitch and had left this piece here not finished, it makes it really hard to get in there and finish that little bit of a seam, which, as you can see, that's why I zigzag that bit before I put the put it together and do the side seam, and then zigzag that side seam. So that's worked and that's done. So on to the next bit, which is putting in the lining. So here's the lining going in. So what I've done is at the edge seam, this is what forms the left and right edges. You can see I've got the lining in, but it's actually inside out, because what I do is put the lining and the main piece right sides together and just stitch them up along that edge. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a gap there. That doesn't quite meet because I've hemmed up the lining piece already. It's obviously on purpose, because then when I put some hem tape or put bias tape, this is what I normally do, I turn that up, and I'll show you when I get to it. Anyway, what I've got to do now is basically just turn it through, haven't I? Just got to turn it round so that it's the correct way. So there we go. That's one side, and where's the other? And that's the other side. So now I have a skirt with the lining, that's the correct way. Now there are a couple of other bits I'm going to do to this before this lining is actually finished being put in. First of all, where I've stitched this in, I will understitch this lining into here onto this, because then it stops it, when it's there, it stops it rolling out, which is always annoying, isn't it, when it does that. So that will get understitched before I finish it, and then finish the seams. And then I will stitch along the top here, just to like a tacking stitch, just to hold this in place. But what I can also do then is make sure my seams are in the right direction. And I said before that this seam here, which is the back piece, and this is actually the left, no, it's the right. Let me have a look at that. It's the left piece, believe it or not, that's the left side, the left front piece. I said I'd stitched this seam in the back here so it faces towards the inner, towards the back piece, because the pocket that's here, that corresponds to it on the main fabric, that needs to sit forward. So the fabric and the seam will sit that way. So by having one go in one direction and one go in the other direction, it means there's a slightly less bulk at this point in the seam. You know, so that if you've got two pieces, and the seams sit right on top of each other, it's a lot of bulk. Whereas if you can have one going one way and one facing the other, as they come together, there's a little bit less bulk there. So that's why I always do it, making sure my lining seam sits towards the back and my main fabric seam with the pocket sits towards the front of the garment, to the front piece. And hopefully that means that it makes it sit nicer. So let me get those things done, understitch there, finish the seam off, tack this one in, this seam in here, and I will actually hem this right now because I can. It's ready for me to do that now. So I've now got the skirt section done. Effectively, that's the inside and the outside. So it's looking great. So I know it looks sort of, it's plain, isn't it? It looks like plain and that, an easygoing plain wrap skirt with side seam pockets, with this very funky, not even funky, it's just really nice lining. Like I say, I know no one's really going to see it, but I know it's there. So it'll be great. And it's all done, and that seam edge there, because of the way that I've done and inserted the lining, both already hemmed. So I've got this nice hem there where it sits, the lining sits just above the main material, which is brilliant. And I've also tacked in along the top here that lining, so it's not going to move about for the next stage, which is creating the waistband with the tie pieces in it, because the tie pieces are form part of that waistband. So yeah, so just on to the next bit, the waistband, which I know does take a little bit of work to get done, because it's not just a straightforward waistband. It is and it isn't. But anyway, I'll get on with that and we'll see how we go. So the waistband consists of three pieces: the back piece, and then the left and then right piece. And then what we have is basically they just fit together, the ends there like that, one there. But then we also have to insert the ties onto the waistband. Now the ties, one of them inserts here at this point, I think it's this side, and then the other one attaches at the end there, so that obviously this side, because it's wrapped under, the tie piece has to be inserted there. But this is the facing pieces, because you also have to cut this out twice, because you have the the outer, which is the waistband that you see, and then you have the facing for the waistband, which is basically the waistband cut a second time. But what I do is the interfacing is supposed to be put onto the piece that will be the outer, the waistband, whereas I always interface the what I call the facing pieces of the waistband, because I want the structure on the inside, just how I do it. And also because I'm going to be putting the hook and bars on there. I want the material to have a little bit more structure to it. So that's what I do. That's the waistband pieces. So I'll start off by getting the facing piece, this stitched together, and get the ties stitched up and turned through. So that's task number 1. So here's the waistband put together, well, half put together. That's the tie, which is the left tie, which is tie for the left side, and as you can see it goes in there at that point, whereas the tie for the other end will be attached there, but I'll attach that once I've fixed the waistband on the skirt. And this is my my facing piece for the waistband, which is, now that I've got these two constructed, I will attach these two together and get it to that point, so then it'll be ready to attach onto, well, almost ready to attach onto the actual skirt. Okay, so this waistband is ready to go on now. I've done all the bits I need to. As you can see, I've got the main waistband, and then I've got my facing piece for the waistband there. That's the one tie. The other one will go on that end. That's the interface side. Now there is obviously one other thing that I've done. You can see here, I put some bias binding tape on this edge. This will be the inner edge of the waistband, so this will be inside. And the reason for putting that there is because I've always found that I stitch this side on, then you turn it over and then stitch in the ditch to catch this edge here, and I always find that a bit annoying, partly because one, it takes a lot of practice to get it right. It's a bit of a skill really. And then the other main thing I've found, that if I'm using a heavier fabric to make this skirt, the waistband, trying to fold it over and get it so you get that little, what, 2-3 mil to catch is really quite difficult. So what I do is I add this bias binding to the waistband that I'm fitting on, so that I can make sure that when I'm stitching in the ditch I actually catch something. So what I do is I put this bias binding tape, what I do is I iron it out flat and then just fold it over and iron it so it's just in half, and then I stitch it on. And I stitch it on so it's in about the middle of it. So that's my 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. And then once it's turned over like that, so that'll be my seam allowance as I would turn it over to tuck it in. I've actually got that bit there to catch when I'm stitching it. So I'll always catch something. I might catch the very edge of the waistband, or more likely I'm going to end up on the edge of this bias binding tape. So I've always got something that's going to make sure it gets caught and gets stitched down. And also it's a nice little feature I find as well, just a little thing that makes it look a bit nicer. Could use fancy bias binding tape, which I have done before, something that looks nice. And I don't know if this is a thing. I don't know if it's something that's already done by people or not, or whether it's just something that I've created to make it easier for myself. So yeah, next thing to get this waistband actually fitted onto the skirt. So I've got the waistband on, so I am pretty much done. Just one other thing left to do, but here we go. As you can see, there's the waistband on nicely. And I'm done stitching the ditch, and the reason for that tape, that bias tape that I put on, I don't know if you can see that, but as you see, hopefully that ditch in the stitch has caught on the bias tape, so it's just enough. So that gives me that sort of extra little cover when I can stitch into there, because sometimes trying to turn this and make sure that there's enough there for it to catch, you know, just a couple of mil so it catches all the way along, sometimes can be really difficult, especially if this fabric is a bit stiff, or maybe it's just a little bit heavy or bulky. So that's why I put that bias tape in there, so that you know, it'll catch that bias tape and stitch in the ditch on the other side. It means it all gets caught in nicely. So that's brilliant. So the only thing I actually got left to do now is put the hook and bars on. Now the hook will go on this side here, on the outer, and then I just have to decide how far along on this side I want the bars to go, which of course it's personal preference. How snug, tight, loose do you want it? And I always put 2 bars on, because what I do is I put 1 bar, I mark it where it fits best. I put 1 bar on, and then I'll put another one about 1 centimetre forward of that. So I've got 2 little bars, and the centimetre forward is seen to be just enough that when it feels a little tight, I can just move it onto the next bar, and it still feels fine then. I can wear it, you know, if I'm feeling a bit bloated or something. I mean, if you want to put 3 bars on, if that was your preference, but for me, I put 2 bars on. So that's all I've got to do now really, is put those 2 bars on and the hook, and it'll be done. So there we have it. That is the Simplicity 8133. My favourite wrap skirt make that I keep making. This one was a little bit longer, the slightly just over the knee version, but I mean it sits really nicely with that lovely lining in there. So yeah, this video isn't really, as it were, a guide to or follow along. It's just more of a sort of, this is how I do it, this is how I've made it, and some of the adjustments and the things that I've done to make it mine, to make it what I want and what I like. So yeah, but yeah, hopefully it's sort of giving you an idea of what I've done and how I've changed this skirt pattern, so it's now something that makes it what I really want. And I imagine I will keep making it, you know, in time to come. I mean, I know I've got a number of these versions of this skirt. I've got one just here actually, which is the slightly shorter version with the William Morris print, and again with a lining in there. So, and I do enjoy making it. I suppose because I've made it so many times, I know how it works, I know how it goes together. And if I got something that I maybe want to just tweak a little bit on it, I probably could do. So there you go, another wonderful skirt made, and we'll join the growing throng of skirts, the wrap skirts that I've got. Yeah, and it's, I suppose, something that is a staple, is it, as they would say, for wardrobes. It's something that I feel I want to always have, because I can match it up, because as I make them I can maybe make slightly different coloured ones, so if I can make sure that I've always got something that will fit with other things in my wardrobe, and that I'll always have a skirt that will match other things. So yeah, a very versatile little make, I think. Like I said, hopefully my ramblings aren't too sort of gibberish and somebody can understand what I've been saying during this whole video and process, and that you can maybe take something away from it. So yeah, all in all, a great make, and I've got a lovely skirt, a longer version again, that I'll be wearing for many years, hopefully, to come. So that's it for me on this one. If you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to. If you click that bell icon, you'll get a notification of when my videos come out. Please do comment. I do love reading your comments. It's always nice to read and hear about what you're doing and what your thoughts are. And if you wish to comment and chat between yourselves, please do. So I think it's just left for me to say thank you very much for watching my video. I look forward to seeing my next video. Bye.
Yeah.